Morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're tuning in the program called What's Going on FlintTalkRadio.com. I'm George Moss, the host of the program, and we are, as always, very glad to have you out there with us, and we are bringing you our program without my co-hostess, who is here every second and fourth Mondays, and this is not the second and fourth Mondays, so she's not here. She's not there. That's a song out called She's Not There. Nobody told me about her. She's not there. She'll be here next week, and we're looking forward to that, and looking forward to an hour of discourse with you out there in the listening audience on a combination of Ustream and YouTube, which we are going to, I think, have our first program simulcast, so to speak, from this network and Ustream, and then we're going to be doing YouTube as well.
Well, so you're recording it on Ustream, and we're uploading it to YouTube, so it's easier to find for people, and that's the reason why people are seeing us in different spots here. So
I see.
Yeah, so that would give more of exposure.
Okay.
And so
I'll leave all of the technical things to John and the studio technicians here. All I know how to do is sit in the seat and take all the applause. The hard work is going on behind the scenes here, and we have some technicians that are at the top of the line, and they do a fantastic job here of keeping us up and running here at FlintTalkRadio.com. I want you to stay tuned to all the programs here at FlintTalkRadio.com. My program called What's Going On is just one of many, and we hope to bring others as well as we begin to expand our production. And I have to always smile when I say that, because when I came here 6 years ago, we had this little small camera. And I would tell our guests, I would say, okay, now the last couple of minutes, why don't you tell the people out there in the listening ship and the viewing audience, what would you like them to leave the program with? And they would say, you mean to tell me there's a camera in here? And it would be that little camera sitting on the mouthpiece. Now, when I'm looking around before the program starts, I'm looking around to find out which of the cameras is on. I think the one that's here in the center is on. But there's so many cameras here right now. It's like I came to a different studio than the one I came to in the time, I think it was 2007 or 2006, somewhere around there when we first started taping the program. Well, anyway, we're here from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock every Monday afternoon, and we are very happy about the fact that we are an expanding studio production, and we are going to eventually rise up to challenge the Alphabet Soup on cable and all the other networks out there. Look out for us. We're going to be putting some dust in your face as we begin to come number one.
Well, of course, Joe Biden won't be listening. Joe Biden won't be listening to us because he only respects legitimate media.
Yeah, he wants the legitimate media to push the gun ban issue, as if we don't have the mainstream media. That's the ones who are cheerleading for the Obama administration, quite frankly, can tell us that we should, in fact, forego the Second Amendment, which gives us the right to bear arms. And the last three words of that amendment says, shall not be abridged, shall not be abridged. And they act like they can't understand what that means. I just want to make sure that I'm checking. I said the last, the last three words says not, the four words say shall not be infringed. And so they act like those words don't apply. So he wants to have the responsible media. That kind of excludes Fox, because Fox doesn't have any pom-poms over there.
Isn't that weird? They're all upset about Fox when they have ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC. They're mad because Fox exists. I don't use Fox every day. I don't even listen to it. I get my news from reading different things on the internet. And I get stuff also sent to me daily from the Daily Cause, which is the left-wing publication. They send stuff to me, alerts, and I also get stuff from the ACLU. I get stuff from the ACLJ. So I think I get more of a balanced view than 90% of the viewer population does.
Oh, no question.
And the liberal Democrats usually say, "Oh, you listen to Fox News, Fox News."
I don't know.
It's like, well, why is that such a big problem with you that there's something out there representing another side of the story? Why is that such an issue for you guys?
That's a major point. It is quite amazing when you look at it. They don't. Well, we saw it in the case of Stacey Dash. When she was saying that she is one of the 5% that's going to vote for Mitt Romney. We had 95% of the black folks going to vote for the president. They couldn't stand the idea that a person wasn't in lockstep absolutely with the other 95%, as if everybody has to think the same way. I don't know, what's the name of that book where everybody was kind of like, was it 1984, where everybody was like a zombie? And so that you're quite right about the assessment that you have, John, that it's like they want absolute cheerleading going on, and that's not the role the press was assigned and thought of when they wrote the first amendment, which gives you the freedom of press. The idea was to keep the government honest, not to be out there cheerleading for every particular protocol they put in place.
Wasn't the press and the media supposed to consider the third estate, the unofficial estate of the government? One is supposed to keep the checks and balances by revealing what they're doing, by being impartial. And nowadays, Rush Limbaugh said this years ago, he said, you ask any journalism student at this point, why are you going to become a journalist? Well, I want to change the world. Well, that's not what your job as a journalist is supposed to be. You're supposed to present the facts and let people make up their own conclusions, basing it upon being objective. And that objectivity is not even they don't even try to feign that anymore. They don't even try to pretend they're objective.
No, they're out there cheerleading, and they're absolutely in the news. They're creating the news. The narrative is being created by the media. And that is not the role that was thought of when they gave them the freedom of press. If you're going to cheerlead for the government, and the government's not going to ever be reticent about accepting the applause from the sideline, the cheerleading stands, the spectators, the media, and there's no reason to have a First Amendment if that's all the press is going to do is, in fact, applaud the performance of the government leaders.
And that's like, well, to me, it's just bizarre. Like, I remember years ago on MASH TV series, Major Burns said, "I believe in individuality. It's great as long as we all do it together." And it's like, and that's exactly what the press and the government really has now.
Yeah. We don't mind you expressing your point of view as long as the point of view that we gave you to, in fact, impart to the listening audience, and that is just so egregious in terms of what the fundamental reasons are for us having a Bill of Rights. It's like you don't need to voluntarily suspend your own rights to, in fact, report that which is going on and maintain an honesty in your reporting so we can maintain the integrity of our government, which is supposed to be, according to Article 4, to have a Republican form of government, and you can only have that if you have an informed population that knows what the issues are and knows what the candidates are doing in Washington, and we can hold them accountable at election time so that if they're not doing that which is in fact constitutionally allowed, we can in fact respond to it at the polls. That's the way it was intended to act, and it's of course been suborned by the cheerleading crowd. There was one cartoon they had on Facebook, and it had the president up there speaking, and the people were saying, he was saying, who are those persons over there supposed to be doing security, but they had pom-poms in their hand, and the person said, Mr. President, that's not the security team, that's the media. Over on the sideline, and they all over there cheering. Anything the president said is like, give me a B, that's for Barack, and give me an O, that's for Obama. And it's just so it just makes your hair stand on the edge in terms of how far we've gotten away from what a free press is really intended to do.
When you have a person like Chris Matthews saying he gets a chill down his leg when he knows that Barack Obama was the president, I went, oh my God, man! I mean, why don't you just ask the guy to marry you? I mean, it's just, oh yeah, how can you object to B when you're saying, oh my God, I'm feeling so excited? I mean, it's just. I'm really floored by that.
Or at least get a room.
It's like it's disgusting. I mean, to me, it's like from religious principles, I consider it a form of idolatry. We put these people in suits over us, and then we put them on a pedestal and worship them. I mean, and they're from our own ranks. Why do we do that?
Yeah, I had a friend that called me right before I came to the studio, and he was mentioning something about the media that I think is very relevant to my purpose here this afternoon. And that is the fact that the media, we're talking about the same media we're talking about with these pom-poms, and upset because we don't have all the networks, in fact, falling in line, and Fox is over here with their own narrative, and they're not falling in line with the narrative of the quote-unquote mainstream responsible, Mr. Biden, the responsible media, responsible to the administration, taking the notepad out and writing down their cues for the morning, afternoon, evening news. friend called me and he was talking to me about something the news has not covered and very quiet on, and that is the Dorner case. In terms of, he called me today and said, have you noticed that no one is mentioning gun control in the aftermath of the carnage created by Christopher Dorner? And I told him I had not thought of it in that sense, but yeah, they have been very quiet. I mean, we haven't had one person come out and say that this is another reason why we have to have gun control. And as I said to him once he brought it up was, when you think about it, the silence is deafening. I mean, why are they so quiet? Because in his manifesto, on page 19 of the manifesto, I did go through the document, and it's interesting that he named every liberal in the country. In the manifesto, he admires the president. He admires Tabby Smiley, Chris Matthews. You were named in there. It's very interesting. We have not heard anyone using Christopher Dorner, the police officer, the former police officer out there in Los Angeles, that went off and shot 7 people, killed 4. 2 of them he ambushed, where they were sitting in a car. I think the carnage started with him killing Monica. What was the last name? She was sitting. She's Chinese, by the way, sitting in a car with her black boyfriend. They were executed by this guy, which some have made into a folk hero. I'm going to read something about this guy in terms of what's in that manifesto that nobody has talked about.
If that guy had named Rush Limbaugh or Ted Nugent or something else in his manifesto, the press have been all over that.
Been all over it.
Yeah.
They would never have been this quiet if they had anything to go with in terms of the ones on the right having been a motivating force or factor in this person going off. But he named every left-wing person that's out there. And because of that, I think that's why we have not heard anybody talking about gun control in relationship to this guy having gone off. And this person was just as crazed as Adam Lanza that went off over here in Newtown, Connecticut. This guy was just as crazed as he was. And we haven't heard one word. We haven't heard one person saying anything about this is another reason why we have to have gun control. Not that I'm a gun control advocate. I'm totally against. In fact, this is another part of why we should have the right to bear arms. And without, let me read the language again here, shall not be infringed. That's why the right to bear arms should not be infringed, because we don't know who might go off. This guy would have passed, if they'd had a mental test to determine whether he would be able to buy a weapon or not, a weapon of mass destruction, they call it, as if any weapon is not a potential weapon of mass destruction. If you haven't shot enough persons the first time around, you can reload and keep shooting if nobody's going to stop you.
Well, see, I'd like to know how many people can be killed before that's considered a weapon of mass destruction. A few years ago here on the east side, a guy was living in a home for mentally impaired individuals. He was a schizophrenic. He used a claw hammer, attacked and murdered 3 people in this, and you never heard about this in the press much. And then he set fire to the house. He attacked him with a claw hammer. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, 3 people dead. I think that's a significant amount of people.
A weapon of mass destruction is any weapon that you're using to kill people, and anything more than when you say mass destruction, how many persons are we talking about? A 6-shooter, that to me that's massive. The number is none. So anything above 0, to me, is mass killing. I mean, it shouldn't be any killing. So they can't use it, is what I'm saying. The narrative cannot be used here to drive the idea that we ought to have these weapons confiscated, because the person that did this carnage was a person that's in the mindset of those on the left. He named all the persons on the left. I mean, that was, he said in the manifesto that Mrs. Clinton, you will be the only candidate I will be able to support in 2016. So that right there says Republicans didn't have to get out there and say anything, because this guy had already made up his mind. And there were certain persons, by the way, who would be the first ones out there to make all kinds of accusatory statements if it had been on the right, that were just simply applauding this guy. I just got through reading on Yahoo this morning that this basketball player, of course, he couldn't make the All-Star team, wasn't good enough. That's you, Stoudemire. And he's up there talking about everybody should read the manifesto, as if this guy's come down from, this manifesto comes down from some deep level thinker, and we ought to pay attention to what this killer said and take him seriously, as if the manifesto has anything to do with an actual finding of fact. I know he made a lot of accusations. Don't get me wrong. I'm very much aware of what the accusations were, but are we supposed to take that as this man's word, particularly with his record having left these body bags in his wake? We supposed to just take his word for it that these were in fact grievances that are legitimate because were made in a claim that this person put out there in the media in his manifesto, itemizing one thing after the other. And one grievance he had really was mad at the entire world when you read the manifesto in its entirety. And when he said that those that knew him would be very surprised that it's him creating this carnage, that said to me a lot, because maybe a lot of the person that was in his entourage, those persons around him and with close confidence in his immediate circle of friends and others who were immediate acquaintances, I don't think they were paying attention to this guy, because this guy was going off quite a few times. Everything set him off. And one of the things he talked about in that manifesto was that he's in a car with 7 other officers, and someone used the N-word, and the N-word, which is used on a constant basis by everybody in the seemingly in the community. The rap artists are wearing the word out. I think they made that in terms of maybe that's mainstream. Maybe Mr. Biden can see if that's mainstream, but it's amazing that what he did when that word was in fact used. They said something about they used the N-word in the car, and this guy jumps. I think he's right in the front seat. He jumps over the front seat. There's the officer sitting in the back of the van. He's got to go through some other folks to get back there. And this guy jumps over his seat and tries to get back there where this guy is, and he's going to physically assault a fellow officer. I'm not saying that you should not have some reticence about these words being used. I'm talking about your response to it, and his response in line with the use of the term. Nobody had gotten hit, and there are certain protocols that are in place, in fact, to address those kinds of things. This guy was constantly showing he's a vigilante, and so it just got to the point where the vigilantism, which he showed that he was involved in that kind of thing even in elementary school, and it just kind of escalated to the point where he did what he did this past week, and in some circles became a folk hero. I was listening to this one professor. I don't have respect for him. I can listen to his rhetoric and see that he's anti-American, which a lot of these left-wing kooks on these college campuses are. These black professors on these college campuses are nothing but anti-Americans. They're anti-American to the hilt, and they're on these working inside these white colleges, predominantly white colleges, emoting all this anti-American rage, and then using white guilt to quiet the criticism down, and hollering all kinds of comments that would never be tolerated inside of a black institution if they were working there. But they're not going to work inside of a black institution. They're not going to Howard University or Fisk University and working in those schools. They want to work in those schools like this guy, Mark Lamont Hill, who made some of the most disgusting comments around this episode that anyone could make. Talking about this was remindful of the movie Django, and found it very exciting. These are his words. He found it to be very exciting. People getting killed, innocent people getting shot down with no ability to defend themselves because this guy was ambushing people. He found it exciting. And that tells us a lot. That tells me a lot about this guy who I've been watching on Fox News. He made these comments on CNN, and just listen to this man. You just hear all kinds of anti-American kinds of thoughts that this guy is walking around with. These people have no loyalty, no patriotism in this country, and they are the people standing in the way of the black community advancing.
Quentin Tarantino was the maker of the movie Django, and he's an anti-gun. He wants gun, and every movie he makes is extremely violent.
Violent.
And it's just like, to me, I don't know. He's just a typical liberal. He says one thing, does the other. Benefits from the idea of violence as being acceptable. He's a total. I mean, his work's interesting in some ways, but I can't justify it.
The hypocrisy on the left is just astounding. It's gotten to the point, quite frankly, and maybe I shouldn't be this close to having a conversation and being a discourse with those on the left, but I just have to tell you that I almost make it a part of my policy to avoid conversations with the left. I was on Facebook last night, and I was just trying to shut that conversation down. At the end of the day, I said, I'm going to have to cut this conversation off because I am not going to let you do what let the people on the left do in terms of my post, and that is waste my time with patented nonsense because I don't think they read anything, and they just want to just throw out here any kind of opinion, thinking they have the right to say anything, and you have the responsibility to listen to the nonsense. And when you ask them for verification or to show me where you read that or what particular document are you in fact referring to, you don't get any responses. They just think they just throw anything out there, and that makes it legitimate because they said it. It's like, the spoken word. We spoke it, therefore it is. And it has validity because it has in fact been said out of the mouth of a person that carries that leftist, commentary. Well, I need some information, and when I ask for it, I don't get it. And so when I say I don't want to talk to people on the left, and people say, well, you should try to be open to, I am open, but I'm not open to you wasting my time. And that's what I'm getting. Well, everybody was cheering Donna. I want to read something to you out of the manifesto that you might have missed, because that manifesto goes on and on and on. This guy spent a lot of time, which shows premeditation. This guy spent a lot of time in terms of sitting there writing out a long narrative. This is not like a couple of pages and then you're out of there. I brought in, this is 19 pages. Now, some of it on Yahoo is comments being made. This is 19 to 37 pages. Now, the manifesto is not 37 pages, but this will be page 15 of the manifesto itself. So this is a very long document, and to have gone through it, it took some time for me to go through it because I was trying to get some idea of what kind of a mindset this guy was in and setting it off. But he actually said the mindset he was in, because on this particular page, I'm going to just read what he said so you can get some idea of the people that they are here trying to make some kind of folk hero out of. This is a very disturbed man. He says, if possible, I want my brain preserved for science, research to study the effects of severe depression on an individual's brain. Since 6/26/08, when I was relieved of duty, and 1/2/09, when I was terminated, I have been afflicted with severe depression. I've had 2 CAT scans during my lifetime that are in my medical record at Kaiser Permanente. Both are from concussions resulting from playing football. The first one was in high school, and it gives us the time period of 1096. The second was in college and occurred in 1099. Both were conducted at Kaiser Permanente hospitals in LA, Orange County, and these 2 CAT scans should give a good baseline for my brain activity before severe depression began in late 2008. And they're acting like this guy, that this week the manifesto has all kinds of credence, and looking over the fact that in that particular part of the manifesto, this guy is actually talking about he had a mental problem and was involved in severe depression for an extended period of time. When you think about the fact that he was laid off of his job, by the way, and he was laid off, he was terminated in 2009, and this is 4 years later. This guy walks around with a grievance. How many persons do that when you have something that makes your blood boil and you're angry, and you go off 4 years later? How many persons like that? And when this guy goes off, why is that dismissed as something to be considered in terms of how does a guy go off being angry over something that happened 4 years earlier, and he's going off 4 years later in the aftermath of that, and going around killing innocent people, and and really had no intent of being taken alive. I was on one other site, and I'm gonna have to deal with what I really want to talk about today, because I want to bring some things in about what I'm doing on Facebook, trying to do something with bringing the government under more control, and I'm going to work on that, and that's not going to go away just because I'm not getting the kind of help that I need to get this done. I'm going to continue to stay at it because it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. I just don't know when, and we'll talk about that later on before we get off the air today. But I wanted to say in closing out on the Dorner comments that I just am really astounded at the left that made such a big deal over the shooting that occurred when Gabby Gifford was in fact shot. And I think we should have this sense of outrage when persons are shot by people that are just going off on the deep end and injuring people because of some kind of mental derangement, even if they're not deranged, just the fact that you're shooting at someone, deranged or not. I mean, that's deranged enough that you do that. And we should be outraged. But this selective outrage when you had Gabby Gifford shot and some persons killed in that incident, they were trying to find out what the links were. Did he listen to talk radio? Was he listening to the people like Rush Limbaugh? Did he go to any tea parties? Well, they were searching, trying to find out if there was a conservative line from where they were to where he was, and if there was something that inspired him from those who are on the right. Well, here was a person on the left. You didn't have to do any search for it. This guy was actually telling you that he was from the left school of thought. Name everybody on the left as people he admired. And the press has not made one comment. As my friend was telling me before I came to the studio, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, he was exactly right. Have not made one comment about the people that were in fact named in that narrative. And Charlie Sheen, who went online and told this guy, "Call me brother," and I guess he was thrilled. I guess he had a thrill up his leg, John, that Dorner had mentioned him in the manifesto as somebody that he admired. Well, I don't want Dorner mentioning my name in having done the things he did, and I'm glad I'm not an influence. Those of you who are cheering because your name was mentioned, I don't know what your problem is, but you certainly have selective memory because you weren't cheering when you thought there was someone on the right that was in fact the motivator for the things that went on out there in Arizona. But that's how we have this discourse being played out on the national stage, where we have this selective outrage that goes on, where we outrage when it happens in this incident, and when it happens over here, we're not quite as concerned about it. It doesn't make us as angry as it does. It doesn't even make us angry. We want to cheer the person on. And this guy has become almost like a folk hero for a lot of people. It was amazing to me that the person was talking about the hut he was in, the cabin that he ended up in and caught on fire. And they wanted to talk about how this guy was in fact burned up by the police department. And I couldn't get anybody to talk about the seventh person that he shot, 4 of whom died, that was suspended. I kept saying, what about the 4 people that he killed? And they had, this is what the LAPD did, and that's where their total focus was. Well, I'll tell you what Dorner did not do. You shoot tear gas into a home. That gas is combustible, and what Dorner did not do when it caught on fire, when that cabin caught on fire, one thing he did not do is that he did not say, "Coming out with my hands up," and he didn't throw out any weapons outside the door, and didn't open the window up and scream, "I give up." He kept he had fired some shots from inside that cabin. And this guy was armed and dangerous. He had shown he was going to take as many persons with him as he could, and he was not going to go. He was not going to surrender. That manifesto says very clearly that this person intended to sacrifice his life. He's going to give his life up. but he's going to try in the meantime to take as many persons with him, and they proceeded with extreme caution as they should have done. They've been crazy to do otherwise, and so they just simply tried to fight this battle from a distance. But he's going to come out of that cabin or die inside that cabin. And he had a choice, and he made the choice to stay inside that cabin. In fact, the reports are that once the cabin was on fire, he fired a bullet in his own, killed himself because that's the end that he had envisioned anyway. That he was not going to come out of this alive. And when he says here, by the way, when I reached for the paper, I'm not taking a drink, so I don't want you to think that I was getting ready to take a sip of water, which is what Marco Rubio did, and that went viral. Everybody was mocking the man taking a sip of water when everybody that's speaking for any period of time is known to have the water right there at the podium. And I think the only problem was that he didn't have the water right in front of him, but there was no podium in front of him. So he reached over and got the water to drink and so on and so forth. I just want you to know I don't have any water in here, but I wanted to reach for this paper and just want to read again what he said. He said that if possible, I want my brain preserved for science research to study the effects of severe depression. This person was depressed, and the comments that he wrote, which he did show some intelligence because he was able to write coherently in his statement. But this person was disturbed and says it in the manifesto. No one's talking about that, just like you're not talking about gun control in the aftermath of this situation. I think the reason that's true is what my friend was saying, because you can't use that and point to those who are opposed to you violating the Second Amendment, which is those of us on the right, because the person that you have to use as a battering ram against this proposition is someone who's on the left where you are, who went off and killed 4 people and wanted to kill more. In fact, I think this is a strong. I think another reason why they're quiet is because this is a strong argument in favor of having the right to bear arms. Because you might have police officers go off. I mean, he was once a police officer, and to say they don't have any mental problems, and when they're under the stress that they're under, we have to be able to protect ourselves from all comers. And that's why it says in the Second Amendment, it says here in very specific language, shall not be infringed. And so I don't know what mainstream media or responsible media have to do with it. That seems to me to be whether they're responsible or not. In fact, the responsible media would be the first ones that will call for it if they're responsible to maintain the integrity of the language. If you want to revise it, then revise it.
You know what's really interesting? You have liberals who will say that where somewhere it says, we provide for the general welfare, and that's a justification for welfare programs. And I went, okay, and then the Second Amendment, well, they can regulate that. Shall not be infringed. But yet you're taking provide for the general welfare means welfare checks each month to millions of people, but you overlook the fact that the Second Amendment is stating what that's for, and it should not be infringed. But that's something you can control. To me, it's like there's no rhyme or reason to the argument style.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring this book to the studio, because I knew we would eventually the conversation would lend itself into this tremendous book by the Honorable Judge, and I don't use that word with many people that I think judges are politicians, and I don't use that word very often with people who are political, but in Judge Andrew Napolitano's case, I think we have an honorable man here that understands the limits of what the Constitution allows us to do, and there are restraints upon power. And so I brought this book to the studio called The Constitution in Exile, How the Federal Government Has Seized Power by Rewriting the Supreme Law of the Land, and that's exactly what has happened. And I want to read a few things, and this was the second part of the program today, read a few things in relationship to the title of this book, The Constitution in Exile, and I think it is in exile. And we've got to bring it out of exile and make it mainstream once again so that we can have a government that is as worthy as are the American people. But right now we have a government gone wild. And that's why in my post, I put a post yesterday on Facebook I try to put one post up a day at least that will provoke a conversation. Just trying to get some people to begin to think about some things that they would not normally think about if we had not, in fact, raised a question. And I got a lot of hits on that particular post. The post, quite frankly, was the reasons why I'm absolutely convinced that politicians have lost their minds. And I didn't have a whole lot of folks that disagree with that proposition. But I was naming some of the people who I think have shown that we have a little teetering going on up there in Washington. And so to say that we want suspend the Second Amendment with the kinds of derangement I see up there in Washington, I think that's problematic. I even think that, quite frankly, that mental illness is an evidence when you can tell me that members of Congress have run up a $16.5 trillion deficit. If that's, to me, that's mental derangement. I don't know of anybody that would be that they could be normal and would run up a debt beyond your means to pay it back. There's be a certain amount of derangement in that. I mean, the person that goes to the store and spend all this money and put everything on a credit card, got 15 of them, and all of them come and do it, and you can't pay the bills off. What is that? That's not normal. And 535 members in the Congress, I know you're wearing business suits up there, but 535 members of the Congress that have run up over a period of time a $16.5 trillion debt that is larger than the economy itself. We have an economy that is 15 point. It's right here I got my Time magazine here. I'm not drinking water, but in terms of the GDP, Time magazine says that the GDP of the the gross domestic product in the United States is $15.8 trillion. $15.8 trillion. Okay. I haven't done the math before I came to the studio. I could do the math. I don't want to take your time and do it here on the air, but you can do the math. The GDP is $15.8 trillion. I'm going to do the math. And the deficit right now is $16.5 trillion. So we have a debt that is 0.7% larger than the GDP of the country. No sane person does that. Where you have a debt that exceeds your economy, and that's just the debt we have right now. We're not talking about the unfunded liabilities that are down the road waiting for us over the next 75 years. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about the debt as it stands as of today, the 18th. This is President's Day. I know most of the presidents that were the founding members of this country are turning over in their grave, probably doing somersaults in their grave, knowing if they even remotely were familiar with what we're doing to the country right now, destroying it from within. And people on the outside just have to wait. Because if we continue down this road, they won't have to do too much because the collapse will take place from within. But we are now with a $16.5 trillion deficit, and the GDP, the gross national product, only $15.8 trillion. We have spent 0.7% above the production of the country. What does that mean for the country? It means that these persons that are running this country have run this country into bankruptcy. They have spent this country into oblivion, and they have the future of the nation down the road. They put the future of the nation in jeopardy because the next generation got to have going to create its own debt, but it's going to have this other burden added on to that, and they're going to pay the burden that's been passed on them from one generation to another, and we're passing it down at this point, 16.5 trillion of it, down to the next generation. That's as it stands right now. And that deficit is not standing still. It's continuing to accumulate because of the interest. There's some people that are saying that within a period of time, and I'm sure exactly what time they were talking about, but in the period of time they were saying that the tax the principal on, not the principal, but the interest on the debt will amount in and of itself to $1 trillion. So we're talking about $16.5 trillion, and at a certain point, we have to pay $1 trillion of the $15.8 trillion in our gross national product. We have to pay $1 trillion of that just paying off the interest of the debt that these persons have created. You know, when a person is, a child is like, taking a crayon and going all over the place, painting on the wall and out of control. You take the crayons from the child, because the child is in fact involved in destroying, property. Well, we have 535 members in the Congress that have taken their pen, signing into law certain things we can't pay for, adding on additional burdens because they want power. And we're now standing at trying to fund Obamacare. We haven't even seen what that's going to do when all of it kicks in 2014. We've only seen the residual aspect of it right now. Wait until next year when the full thing kicks in. And we're talking about trying to pay that burden on top of everything else that we have here. We have unfunded liabilities in the neighborhood of $88 trillion. Add that on. We're talking about $88 trillion on the $16.5 trillion. We're talking about more than $100 trillion on an economy that right now stands at we're the largest economy in the world, but no economy can stand this kind of pressure where you are 15.8 trillion at this point, and I don't think that's going to stand in terms of it going up, because all of the indicators are that we are going to continue to depress the economy, particularly with those persons passing these really ridiculous, talking about these propositions that make no sense in terms of setting up unemployment bills called minimum wage laws, which 90% of the economists will tell you that those laws are nothing but unemployment bills. If you doubt that, those of you who like to go to the movie and things like that, just go to the movie and see it, because those lights in the floor is one indication of that. That's what $725 an hour did. It cut out the guy with that flashlight. Used to be a person, when I was coming up, used to be a person showing the patrons their seats. Shine the light at the floor, and you can see where you're walking, and they show you your seat, shine the light in there, and you go and take a seat that's open. It was very dark in those theaters. It was more dark then than it is now. What they did, though, because they're taking the guy out of there with the flashlight, they have to put more lights in the facility, and they have now a $7.25 an hour job that no one is employed in terms of fulfilling that responsibility. The lights are doing the job now, and there's nobody getting a paycheck as a result of it. And you see that all over the society, where they have and gone with turnstiles at the grocery store. So when you start talking to me about $9 an hour, it just shows that you have not learned anything about what you haven't learned Economics 101, which says that when you raise the minimum wage, what you're doing is that you are in fact taking the ones who are least skillful, and you're throwing them out on the bricks where they would never work. And those of you who are upset about the differential in numbers of black teenagers working and white teenagers working, I can tell you that before they had a minimum wage law, there were more black teenagers working than white teenagers, because the minimum wage law that sets up a certain standard for you to pay your workers, you're going to look for more skilled workers. And those persons that are least skilled, I'm not saying all the blacks would be least skilled and all the whites would be more skilled, but I'm talking about in terms of how that plays out in terms of the dropout rate and things of that sort, and the grades you're making in school and things of that sort. We see the test scores and can say there is a differential to be considered here. If you're going to start paying upon merit, then there's going to be a population that is going to be hurt more so than another part of the population is going to be hurt. And you raise the minimum wage. I don't even know where the thought came from that when you have a minimum wage, we're talking about you trying to live on that wage. Minimum wage law. The minimum wage is an entry level job designed to create a resume, and then you have some experience you can carry to the next level, and then the experience helps you get a higher rate of pay, determined by the market. But we are not. We don't have politicians that understand anything other than how to run their mouths and get in front of the camera and fool people and get their votes.
Well, it's interesting that they're saying about they want a mandatory minimum wage. So they're basically saying a when it comes to the fact that basically most business people are going to say, I got to lay off people to meet that for the keep a few people, remove the rest, so I can make ends meet. So how is that occurring this problem, the chronic unemployment problem? And it's like these people who are in the government never held a job in their lives except for being in government largely. I mean, locally, I don't know many of these people who have had jobs outside of being in government.
I'm with you 1,000% on that. And the fact of the matter is that one of their premier past leaders, George McGovern, was one of the persons who actually stated as much. He said that when he went into business, if he'd had the understanding that he had as a business person, if he had that understanding when he was a member of the Congress, he would have acted totally different than what he did, because he didn't know how business operated. Yet he's passing all these laws as if he was a person that was inured with the talent to determine what was in the interest of the workers and the business person that employ the workers.
Which, I think it's unusual too. Like Obama and his wife, Barack Obama and his wife, I mean, they make buku bucks. I don't know how they make as much money. I guess at Harvard or wherever he was teaching now, I guess he makes like a few $100,000 a year being a professor. I don't see anything in his background that gives. I've seen professors at U of M who have much better credentials than Barack Obama had. Actually doing things that are applicable in the real world, and real experience, plus being college educated, and plus bringing that into the academic setting. He was making all this money, and they're so out of touch. They talk about the corporation people being out of touch with the reality. They never made payroll. And that can't be emphasized enough. When you have all these expenses and you got to pay people to keep your people in positions so they can do the jobs, that's a tremendous burden. And these people never done that.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It's a part. It shows them about the ego that they would feel conversant in an area that they never run anything in. And the business community doesn't know anything. They know it, and yet the business person's out there every day doing business, having to meet payroll, having to make the ends meet, having to order the inventory, have all the business particulars in place. He doesn't know anything, but these persons that have never done any of the things he's doing have all the answers. Last week there was an article by Thomas Sowell, and he was talking about Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, and who now has said that he wants to regulate painkillers in the hospital. I don't know. Is this Ben? I mean, Mr. Bloomberg, are you now Ben Carson? Have you done any pediatric surgery? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what your medical credentials are. But you seem to be an expert on all the areas. Have you practiced any of these things that you are the expert that you claim to have expertise in? John, did you read where Mayor Bloomberg, New York's mayor, is now talking about he wants to determine the painkillers that are dispensed in the hospitals?
Yeah, I saw that. That was a couple weeks ago. I saw that, and it's like, oh no, you're Dr. Bloomberg.
Yeah, now it's Dr. Bloomberg.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I just call him Lord God Bloomberg because I have friends that live on the East Coast, and a bunch of them live in New Jersey, and they're glad because they don't live in New York because now they could still buy a 32-ounce soft drink. It's just this guy's like, and why don't people there in New York City say, dude, you're a mayor, okay, you're not God. Shut the hell up. Meet with city council, talk about road conditions, about the infrastructure, stuff you're supposed to be concerned about as a mayor, crime, whatever. But stay away the hell from things that you have no knowledge of and you can't have any expertise in. You can't have that.
I am absolutely amazed at what politicians get themselves into, and they are so limited. If they had this expertise that they claim that they have, wouldn't some of them come out of the Congress, and because they're making $174,000, that's before they have this latest raise. We are here suffering, and our paychecks are contracting, and they give the raise in the midst of this financial pushing us to a fiscal cliff.
And did you hear Pelosi said that if they took a pay cut, that would be like beneath their dignity, lower their dignity. She and her husband have made millions of dollars because they had insider information to trade during the time when the stock market was crashing. They knew where to get in, go out of. They made buku bucks on that. That's not enough for them to live on. $42 million is not enough for them. That's for generations of their families could live on that if they did things right normally.
They're not going to like my proposal in terms of what I'm going to be advocating. If we can get this off the ground, I think we're making some strides toward it. The networks are coming together, and I got to do a lot more work in terms of some of the the media, the radio media and the other media. I'm trying to get some publicity around what we're doing. That's the Media Research Center trying to contact you, Mr. Brent Bozell, and some of the others out there, the Tea Party. I need your help, but they're not gonna like my proposal very much because one of the things that I'm advocating is that we will in fact cut their pay. We want to cut the number of hours they up there in Washington too because they're busybodies, and the Constitution says that the Congress must, in Article 1, it says Congress must meet at least once a year, which gives you some idea of what the framers had in mind when they had the Article 1 placed in the Constitution. The first article they put in there was create the legislative branch of government. And they said that they must meet at least once a year. So they weren't talking about them sitting up there 365 days of the year, whatever vacation time they take off, and all of that will be different. But be sitting there around the clock as a busybody organization. The idea, if you say that they're required to be there at least once a year, the idea would be that they would to go there, do their business, and go home. Well, the proposal if we can get this convention off the ground, this constitutional convention that we are in fact pushing, some of us are working very hard at it, and we are continuing to talk behind the scenes. We're not going to come, a flower. Plant the root goes down into the ground first before it comes up out of the ground and shows itself in its exposure state because it wants to thrive and wants to live. And if you cut off that without a root, then you kill the whole thing. We're doing some things that are not so much visible right now, but we are making strides, and I'm very happy with the progress we're making. I can't tell you when this is going to be ready to run with, but we are definitely making some progress, and there are more people on board now than I thought we would have at this point in time. But they're not going to like my proposal very much because I'm going to be proposing that they, in fact, serve a single term, and that expertise that they have, they go back to their respective districts and their states, and they apply that which they learned in Washington along with the expertise they already have, and then they make a commitment and they make a difference in the communities where they come from. We don't need them sitting up there. With all the expertise they have, they claim they have, then why are they sitting up there in Washington then and spoiling us from not being able to have the benefit of their leadership in the local community where we are? Because government works best when it's closest to the people. So we got some proposals that's going to fix a lot of stuff when we can get this off the ground. Let me read this to you before we go off the air. I wanted to read something from the great and the honorable Judge Napolitano because I think his demeanor has been something that we can respect. This person has been pretty much he's been diligent in trying to maintain a focus upon what the constitutional restraints are upon government. And I think that's one reason he's off the air too. I mean, he's up there trying to teach people with this puny document. It's not 2,000 pages. With this puny document here, 7 articles is the original Constitution of the United States. And it was trying to just simply bring to bear upon what it requires the government to do, and the restraints placed upon it in Articles 1, 2, and 3, which has been dismissed. Here's what he says in the preface of his book, The Constitution in Exile, where he makes this very, very powerful comment. He asks a question to start the preface off with. He says, do we still have a Constitution? And he says, before you jump to answer too quickly, hear me out. Today, the federal government recognizes no limitations on its power. It has utterly rejected the idea, integral to the Constitution, that is one of limited powers, carefully and precisely delegated. Today, the federal government does whatever it wants to do. In essence, the feds say, quote, don't like the drinking age in South Dakota? Well, just threaten their highway funds and they'll come around. If the FBI is frustrated by public scrutiny, just make it a felony to speak about receiving certain self-written search warrants. Don't like the idea of kids working after school, just make shipment of the furniture they make illegal. Think any of this might be unconstitutional? Well, he says, let the court sort it out. But that's where we are right now. where they're making everything illegal. But this right here, this document, this tremendous constitutional mandate, these restrictions upon power, the Bill of Rights given stating very specifically what the rights of the citizens are, and the rights that you in fact have retained from your government, have been disregarded by the government. As all of them up there in Washington have done that, and we've got to get their attention. And I just don't think we're going to be able to do it going back and forth between the two parties. I'm definitely going to participate in the party network, but I just don't see how that gets the job done. And one person was arguing with me last night and saying that, well, you voted for one of the two party persons and blah, blah, blah. Yes, I did. And I'll tell you why I did it. I did it because of Charles. I agree with Charles Krauthammer's view, and that is I vote for the most conservative candidate that's running, because I understand that we have to take incremental steps to arrive there as well. It won't be in one fell swoop. But in order to get the job done, we've got to try to slow the train down while we're putting things in place that will in fact change the paradigms in this country around our relationship to government and government's relationship to the American people. That's going to happen, but in the meantime, we got to have a country that's going to be here once we get the protocols in place. And that's why some of it is slowing the train down so that we're not heading toward that fiscal mountain. I know you say it's a cliff, but it's a fiscal mountain. And we can have something on the other side of it once we get this thing fixed, because we are going to fix it. We don't have any choice in the matter. We either fix it or we lose the country. And I don't think those options are compatible with our staying on the sideline and letting the government continue to do the things it's doing and going down this road that we know we know in history where this leads to, because we have other examples of republics having burned themselves out the way we are doing it here. And we have no reason to believe it will end up any different if we are going to do something, and doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. That's not going to get it. And so I'm at the point right now where I'm trying to leave something for the next generation, so that I'm not the last one to have come up and benefited from what was once at one time the greatest country in the world. And it has the fumes of that right now, but it's becoming less and less that as we lose more and more of our liberty. In fact, there are some that are saying that this country, the world is horrified over the fact that we're going down this, what some have described outside the nation as a communist trek that we're going down. And they're saying the world is horrified over what they see happening in the United States. We're going to unhorrify them by intervening and doing our due diligence as American citizens, because we, the people, are supposed to be the ones that the government is representing, and we have got to do our duty as citizens to make sure that we are in fact playing the role that we in fact should be playing. When we come together next week with my co-hosts, we're going to be doing a little bit on Black History Month, since this month is the month that's set aside to say a few things about Black history, although every month of the year could be history piece for not just Black history, but for the history of the greatest nation and its creators of this nation, to celebrate that 12 months of the year, 24/7 celebration of that, because we have something we have to hold on to. So until we get to that, we'll be expecting you to do as always, to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.